following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
From wherever we decide studios, broadcasted live on iTunes, Spreaker, and worldwide, this is the Turnbuckle Talk Radio Podcast with your host, the producer, Pat G. The G stands for gangsta. And now kick back and get ready for the eargasms.
Welcome once again to the Turnbuckle Talk Radio Podcast, TCRP. Of course, brought to you by Gear Network and, of course, GearNetwork.com. Visit GearNetwork.com for all our sponsors. Click the links, buy merch, and support the Gear Network and its content of shows. But for that, I'm Pat G, along with Dan Fury. This is the Turnbuckle Talk Radio Podcast, and we are talking everything and anything about Survivor Series.
Absolutely. It's one of the original Big Four. It's the year-end wrap-up pay-per-view, if you remember back in the Disney, how everything has been. And, this is one of the big ones. And we're talking about one of the premier pay-per-views of the year. And really, as we talked about last week, the way the road to WrestleMania has now started beginning at Survivor Series. And we're going to be talking all things Survivor Series tonight.
Absolutely. And to start off, we're going to talk about the favorite Survivor Series teams that have been assembled through the years of Survivor Series. And one of the top ones you have to go back to is from Survivor Series 3, November 23rd, 1989. And that is the Team Hulkamaniacs, captained by, of course, Hulk Hogan, along with Demolition and Jake the Snake Roberts.
And that is weird. That is a weird one, especially considering where Demolition is going to be a year later on my list. But it's like, if you look at that team, that is a Hall of Fame team and a kind of eclectic feeling for a wrestling fan to see that, because you have Hulk Hogan, who's like the ultimate, no pun intended for future reference, the biggest good guy, and the saying the prayers, eating the vitamins. And then you have these two bondage dudes that are all jacked up in Axe and Smash. And then you have one of the best promos, if not the best promo guys in the business, and one of the most sinister characters in Jake Roberts.
Yeah. And
they're the good guys.
Yep. Because they were facing the team of the $1 Million Team of Ted DiBiase, the Warlord, the Barbarian, and Zeus. Because this was a continuation of the No Holds Barred movie that Hogan made in 1989.
Yeah, I mean, this was kind of nearing the end of the arc with this. The Zeus character was getting to that point where it was like, okay, we've seen enough. I mean, cool-looking character, but he was an actor, so his in-ring skills were limited, and they put enough star power around that match to camouflage the lack of in-ring skills that Zeus had, but it was still an awesome presentation. If you look at that as a main event, it goes down as probably, like you said, one of the most memorable, because that's one of the ones that pops up in your head.
And that's the thing. It wasn't even the main event of that card.
Wait, who was the main event of that?
That was the Survivor Series 3. I believe it was the team of Andre Haku, Arn Anderson, and somebody else versus
Tully. Was it the Brain Busters in that one?
I'm not sure. No, it wasn't the Brain Busters. It was It was not the Brainbusters. I think it was Haku. It was Andre, Haku, Arn Anderson, and so it was like the Heenan family versus like Warrior, Savage, and the Rockers.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, like that was because that was when Macho was obviously, the top good guy with the title. That's right. Oh my God, because this was Hogan not having the title.
Yeah, I just brought it up. It was the main event match that night was the Ultimate Warriors, Ultimate Warrior Jim Neidhart, Shawn Michaels, and Marty Jannetty defeating the Heenan family of Bobby Heenan, Andre the Giant, Haku, and Arn Anderson.
Okay. Because when Warrior comes to mind, it's actually the following year's team that Ultimate Warrior was featured on that always comes to my mind. Like I see, and I know this is going to sound really hilarious. At that time, Warrior was there. I just always seem to forget what team he was on, because to me, the 1990 team was the best Ultimate Warrior team of all time, because it was literally the Warriors.
Well, it was Survivor Series 1990. It was Hulk Hogan, Tito Santana, and the Ultimate Warrior defeating Hercules, Paul Roma, Rick Martel, Ted DiBiase, and the Warlord with Virgil and Slick in a 3-on-5 Survivor Series match.
That was the one, because I've got Survivor Series 1990 was the Legion of Doom, Kerry Von Erich, and Ultimate Warrior combining for the Warriors to go against Axe, Smash, Crush, and Mr. Perfect.
Ooh. Okay, no, that was on there. That match was second of the card. Warrior worked double duty that night.
That's right. Okay, that was and he won both of his matches that night.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's all starting to jog.
Yeah, it was the Warriors of Animal Hawk, the Texas Tornado, and the Ultimate Warrior defeating the perfect team of Axe, Crush, Mr. Perfect, and Smash with Bobby Heenan and Mr. Fuji.
Okay, all right, now we're all clear.
Yeah. No, that card was on. That match was on there because I'm like, no, that match was on there too. Let me look up the card here.
See, this is the beauty of it, because it's like these were all matches as a child I watched, and I'm like, the only thing going through my mind while watching that match was literally, holy crap, it's the Legion of Doom, Ultimate Warrior, and Texas Tornado. This is awesome. And like my brain was imploding as a little kid. And of course, 1990 was in the unbelievable year of the Warrior.
Oh, absolutely. And this is the thing is, I believe all four of those guys had the face paint too.
They did. And that was when Ultimate Warrior, for that match, did the small Warrior logos on his face, so you could see Jim Hellwig, Ultimate Warrior, underneath all of it. It was like he was all like rocker haired out like Aquanet number 10. And they had the crazy, insane promo before.
Yes.
With the screen with like all of their logos all on it. And I'm just like, these dudes are going to murder someone tonight. Like, Demolition and Mr. Perfect are screwed. And I'm sitting there as a kid being like, this is so awesome. This is the shit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, another one of the favorite teams a lot of people talk about is from Survivor Series 5 of November 24th, 1993. The team of Lex Luger, Rick and Scott Steiner, and The Undertaker taking on Yokozuna, Jacques Rougeau, Crush, and the infamously Ludwig Borga. So
the one thing that I remember from this entire match, and I believe it's been on Facebook a bunch of times, is Undertaker with Paul Bearer in the ring with Steiners and Lex Luger, and Undertaker opens up his coat, and they walk around, and it is the original Betty Ross flag inside of the Undertaker's coat, which really, if you want to split hairs, is the original American Badass gimmick that the Undertaker did. And it was like, the match to me, not memorable. That one moment on Monday Night Raw, probably the most memorable part, because they were at that time trying to, they had strayed away from the Narcissist character, and Lex Luger was red, white, and blue, the Lex Express, body slamming Yokozuna on 4th of July, American. And it was like, I hate to say it, Undertaker kind of out-America'd you on that one, bro.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing. Like, there's a lot of teams that are memorable and everything, but it was very shortly after I think maybe like early 90s-ish when you got into the Monday Night War, that a lot of the classic Survivor Series teams got put to the wayside. Yeah, you still had your Survivor Series matches, like one or two of them, but they weren't like the build up to a feud, or kind of like the final shot of a feud, or combining feuds.
Well, that was one of the things that you look at, and because you mentioned teams during the Attitude Era, one that comes to my mind is Survivor Series 99 with, as weird as this is going to sound, you had the Hardys and Edge and Christian on a team together against the Hollies and Too Cool, and you're just kind of sitting there, and it's like, you threw 4 of the best tag teams together in the Attitude Era, and you got yourself kind of a cool little thing. And honestly, the best part about that was Hardcore Holly ended up winning the match. So you had, Edge and Christian guaranteed, one of them is already a Hall of Famer, but a Hall of Fame tag team.
Yeah.
You had the Hardys, Hall of Fame tag team. You had Too Cool, Hall of Fame tag team. You had the Hollies, the Hall of Fame tag team, all in one match during a time where a lot of these Survivor Series cards stopped being team oriented as far as the major 4-on-4 or 5-on-5 teams. And they started becoming singles matches saturated. And it's like, you had 4 of the best tag teams going out there and having a damn barn burner to steal one from JR in the midst of the Attitude Era, when it came down to a lot of the single stars for WWE swaying, especially in 1990.
Oh,
because,
absolutely.
99 was when there was no catching up to WWF at that time frame. And this was also in the time where, if I'm not mistaken, please, jog my memory on this one, because I think I'm correct for once. This was the one where Stone Cold Steve Austin went out hurt. A big Survivor Series memory. Remember, he was run over by Rikishi.
Yeah, they ran the angle of him getting run over because Austin was going out for neck surgery.
Exactly. So you had Triple H, who was feuding with Mr. McMahon at the time. You had The Rock, and the substitute for that was Big Show.
Yep.
And that was Big Show's first title win in WWF, first heavyweight championship, was at Survivor Series in a way that they kind of wrote him off TV. So once, you had a big match, a big singles match, but...
Well, what's funny about Big Show that night is he worked double duty, so to speak, because he won a 1-on-4 elimination match against Big Boss Man, Mideon, Prince Albert, and Viscera. In a minute 26, mind you.
Oh, Jesus. I mean, hey, that was kind of a really cool time, because also that was when he was feuding against Big Boss Man, because if I'm not mistaken, shortly thereafter they shot the cringeworthy funeral.
Yes.
For Big Show's father, because he was champion. And I mean, the only thing that was cringeworthy worse than the promo in the cemetery was Big Show's leather pants.
Yes. Yes. And what's bad about that is, like, Big Show actually being able to, like, bring up that raw emotion because, as we all know, internet, like,
Absolutely.
Big Show's father had actually passed away way before that was even before even the storyline.
But the cool part about that is with that angle, and Big Show has talked about it, there was some catharsis with that, was that he never really was able to get past the passing of his father.
Yeah.
So by shooting that angle, as ridiculous as we thought it was, like
it was his closure to the whole situation.
Exactly. So, I guess that one good thing came out of the unfortunate cemetery angle. But, you're absolutely right. At that time, in the Attitude Era, there weren't many teams, but I will bring up the end of the Attitude Era and one of my favorite teams. Okay? And this is the hard part about this match, because this is one of the best main events. Okay? Best main events, hands down, that WWE has put on the one of the big four. Okay? And that was Team WWF versus Team Alliance. Oh my God, dude. I can remember flat out, I won't lie, marking the fuck out for this match. Because, it was the end of the invasion angle, which you kind of saw coming. But the cool part is just step back for 5 seconds and look at the star power that was in this one match. All of them Hall of Famers. All of them. Every single one of them. You had Undertaker, Rock, Jericho, Kane, Big Show on one team.
Yeah.
Across from them was, Kurt Angle, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Rob Van Dam, Shane McMahon. On the other goddamn side of the ring. And during this match, you had like twists and turns, and you had Jericho trying to screw over Team WWE, and you had Austin losing to The Rock, and you had that last image of Vince McMahon holding his hands up high because it's like, hey, and Booker T. Sorry, forgot Booker T.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about Booker T. Not mean to forget you. Booker T. Okay? And one of the coolest moments in that match for me as a fan, and I'm sure you're going to remember it as well, is when Shane O'Mac has the Undertaker standing behind him. Undertaker just beats the bricks off of him, picks him up for the tombstone, and holds his arms out. And Shane had his hands around his waist and his legs locked around his neck. And Undertaker just holds his arms out like, bitch, please. Fucking tombstone, like jumping tombstone, and fucking nails him right in the fucking dead center of the ring.
Yeah.
Boom. Outstanding elimination.
Absolutely.
Awesome stuff. Awesome match. And that's two teams in one match that were that damn good.
Yeah. And what's funny is not to like saying the next team match top that, but you come across teams that are Hall of Fame worthy and everything. And the one from 2006, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, the Hardys, and CM Punk.
Oh, Jesus, in Philadelphia.
In Philly, facing Randy Orton, Edge, Johnny Nitro, Gregory Helms, and Mike Knox. Like,
who was that? His name's Mike Knox. Who?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it was basically, hey, we got to get everybody on a show, on a team. So CM Punk was the ECW pick, aka that's why Knox was on the other side.
And I believe at that time, if I'm not mistaken, they were running an angle with Punk and Kelly Kelly.
Yes.
And she was kind of dressing like him, which was oddly hot. And then, Mike Knox, because she was doing the, quote, exhibitionist gimmick. And Mike Knox was her, like, mongoloid boyfriend.
Yeah.
But the best part about that night was, first off, 2006 was a weird year for WWE anyway. Because, and especially towards the end, because you had the weird shift in fan reactions that people weren't expecting.
Yep.
Like, prime example of that was the fan reaction to John Cena started to change at the Royal Rumble that year. Really picked up at WrestleMania in Chicago, and then was fever pitch at the Manhattan Center against Rob Van Dam. I mean, I was there that night. The relaunch of ECW was just insane. And then the fan reaction at that Survivor Series pretty much told everyone who they wanted to be the anointed one over John Cena, and that was CM Punk. And I mean, if you go back and you watch that, and try to watch it with a critical eye. Don't watch it as one of these fans who's like, oh, fucking new CM Punk, oh, or whatever, idea you have about CM Punk. Go and watch that. And the fact that he's standing in the ring with D-Generation X and the Hardy Boys,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not chanting for Triple H, they're not chanting for the Hardys, and they're not chanting for Shawn. They're chanting for a dude who's literally only been on TV since August.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, he'd only been on TV for 4 months, and the entire arena in Philadelphia was chanting his name. It was almost like foreshadowing of how arenas were going to act, 5 years down the road.
And what's funny is about that night is, of course, you had CM Punk on the team with Team DX, Triple H and Shawn Michaels. But then you look at the match, the next Survivor Series match after that, and you brought up John Cena. John Cena was on a team with Bobby Lashley, Kane, Rob Van Dam, and Sabu, facing Big Show, Finlay, MVP, Test, and Umaga.
I forgot about that match completely.
Yeah, and what's funny is the other elimination match that night was Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, Ron Simmons, and Sergeant Slaughter with Arn Anderson defeating the Spirit Squad.
That was the match I remember. Okay, isn't memory hilarious?
Yes.
You just listed off a John Cena match, okay, in 2006.
Yep.
And mind you, Umaga and John Cena were going to go on at the beginning of 2007 and have one of the best Royal Rumble main events. Like, you go back and you watch that, and that match was brutal. Like,
it was. It absolutely was.
It was a friggin' amazing match, but this was kind of the lead up to that setup heading to Detroit for what Umaga and Bobby Lashley were going to do in the Battle of the Billionaires. Now, you look at that. Of the Survivor Series matches that come to mind, Ric Flair heading up a team of legends to beat up cheerleaders is one of those matches that comes to my mind instantly, not John Cena leading against all of those people that you just mentioned. That is the funky funniness of Survivor Series teams.
Oh, absolutely.
And that brings another Survivor Series team to mind, and this was on my list, okay, because we can't mention a Survivor Series without mentioning Eddie.
Oh, of course.
Go back to 2004 during the Ruthless Aggression era, and I mean, you look at SmackDown. Okay, first and foremost, everyone says this show's the A show, this show's the A show, and we're going to talk about it later because now you have 3 shows claiming to be the A show. In 2004, the real A show, in my opinion, hands down, was SmackDown. And SmackDown had Eddie, John Cena, Rob Van Dam, and Big Show on one team.
Yeah.
Okay, all 4 of them heavyweight champions, all 4 of them Hall of Famers. And that was one of your teams in 2004. And that was really one of those matches, because John Cena had the year prior, he and Chris Benoit were the final 2 in the SmackDown Royal Rumble match. And I mean, that was when Chris Benoit had tapped out Brock Lesnar. And that was kind of a lead up of the way things were going to go. And John Cena, once again, was on a team with another legend the next year. And he had that great United States Championship run. I mean, he and Big Show had wrestled each other in Madison Square Garden months prior to this. And then all of a sudden, bickety bam, bickety boom, they're kicking ass on a team together on one of the biggest pay-per-views of the year.
Oh,
and it's
absolutely.
Like, look at the caliber of stars in that match. I mean, you kind of wish that they were going against, like, in hindsight, a bigger team.
No,
because the team that we had was Carlito, great Intercontinental Champion, Kurt Angle, record speaks for itself, and then Mark Jindrak and Luther Reigns.
And that's the thing. Like, Luther Reigns was one of them guys that WWE was trying to develop and bring up and create by putting him with Angle.
Yeah.
And Mark Jindrak had that factor of he went through the power plant in WCW, was going to be one of their guys, and then fortunately we all know what happened in WCW. But then WWE was like, they wanted to put Jindrak and Sean O'Haire as kind of like the next big thing, because both of those guys had the look, both of those guys had talent and ability, but they needed polishing. So they tried to put them with people that would raise their game, aka Kurt Angle and Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit. Unfortunately, it just didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes these things, take place, and it's funny to think that you had 4 of these single stars that would all hold heavyweight championships throughout their career on one side. And it seems kind of like a one-sided match. But, okay, I'm going to bring up another one to leave the Ruthless Aggression era for 5 seconds and to go back to the, just at the cusp of what was going to become the Monday Night War. The Hart Foundation. And I'm not talking about, the Hart Foundation that we knew with Bulldog and Anvil and Owen.
No, we were talking the actual Harts.
The actual Harts in '93. You had Bret Hart, Bruce Hart, Keith Hart, and Owen Hart. Owen Hart before he became the awesome Owen Hart character that he would become in '94.
Yeah.
Okay. This was just as he was starting to become the King of Hearts.
Yep.
And the 2-time Slammy Award winner. And the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. Older brother. Owen Hart. That right there was a magnificent setup, because at that time, the entire company was put on the shoulders of Bret. And this was during the time when wrestling wasn't the popular, the cool, the in thing to like. And it was ironic that at this time, it was against Shawn Michaels. Which to me, Shawn Michaels and, Barry Horowitz, Greg the Hammer Valentine, and Jeff Gaylord under masks.
Yeah, because originally it was supposed to be the Hart family versus Jerry Lawler and his Knights, but Lawler had a dispute with Vince McMahon and left the company, and they needed a substitute.
And Shawn, obviously, because of his relationship with Bret,
yep,
was a great fill-in, because the two had talked in so many interviews saying that they got along fantastically. I could see Bret saying, "Hey, let's put Shawn in there. We can work with Shawn."
Yeah.
And of course, Greg the Hammer Valentine and Barry Horowitz. But I'm sure that there was that whole, all right, give it to Shawn. Shawn, especially considering Shawn was going to go on in a couple months and have the greatest ladder match of all time at WrestleMania in the Garden.
Yeah.
And funny enough, Owen and Bret were going to go and have, in my opinion, the best opening match of any WrestleMania ever, and you look at it and you're like, once again, Survivor Series, in my opinion, is kind of foreshadowing for what we're going to get later on at WrestleMania.
Yeah, like it's always been Survivor Series has always been that show. It'll be like, hey, we're gonna end the year out because this is the big show, but it was always that foreshadowing future type deal of what you're going to expect come December and January when the Royal Rumble hits.
Absolutely. And one match that comes to my mind in recent time, because it's kind of hard to pick a recent, main event that had any kind of implications and all that other stuff as far as storyline goes. But I'm going to point to a recent Survivor Series that, in my mind, the team versus team match basically made the moment that people didn't think would happen. And I think you know where I'm going with this, because I'm a huge Sting fan. Absolutely. Freaking huge. Loved it back in the NWA. In WCW, of course, during the Monday Night War, Sting was my guy. TNA, Sting was my dude. I always wondered, is Sting going to sign? And then, lo and behold, you have Triple H and, Seth Rollins is his champion. And you have, Stephanie and, just such a good build with Triple H and Stephanie running the show. And it came down to Seth and Dolph Ziggler were the last two respectives for their team. I mean, John Cena was in there. Big Show was in there. It was a great Survivor Series team. You had Luke Harper was in there. And then all of a sudden, Triple H does not want his team to lose, because if they lose, Triple H is gone. Stephanie's gone. They're no longer empowered.
Yeah, the authority is gone.
The authority is gone. Triple H is dropping pedigrees. And then you just hear a crow caw, and you see the screen, and Sting walk down the aisle of a WWE pay-per-view, one of the big four. There's the face-off, the kick, the Scorpion Death Drop. Then there's him grabbing Dolph Ziggler, dragging him over Seth Rollins, and walking out. And that was the precursor. That was the fire starter. That was the spark that we needed that would bring us to WrestleMania. But more importantly than that, we got Sting in WWE, and clearly by what they did at that moment, they were like, okay, we're putting a lot of stock in Sting showing up here. And they have, because the merchandise alone that they've made on him since WWE, it's huge. I mean, that year, he was the big surprise for the WWE games. Like, you look at Warrior showing up the year prior, and then you look at Sting showing up. It's almost like, Survivor Series around the 2K release for the game is always a big deal. I mean, Rey Mysterio. I mean, you look at the video game. Goldberg versus Brock Lesnar happened in Toronto at Survivor Series because of a damn video game commercial.
Yep. And that's the thing. And Sting was always the one guy a lot of people, you weren't sure if he was ever going to show up. Because it was like, he was the franchise. He was WCW through and through. Just like Undertaker's WWE through and through. But it was like, is he ever going to do it? And yeah, we have what we have now, AEW and so on and so forth. But at that time, in early 2000, WWE was it. And we didn't have other companies. Yeah, you had other companies or whatever, but everybody knew who was the main dog. And it was like, you had former WWE guys show up at TNA and ROH and so on and so forth. But as far as big name star players, Sting was legitimately the last one.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he was the holdout for a lot of people. and myself included, like, did I believe that there was a snowball's chance in hell that Sting was going to show up in WWE? When the video game trailer hit, I thought, cool, they got him in a video game. I did not think I would see him in a pay-per-view, and I sure as shit didn't think that I was going to see Sting show up at Survivor Series that year and Scorpion Death drop the COO of the company. Didn't think it was going to happen. Not a million years, let alone to go and be featured on the WrestleMania poster that year. Didn't think it was going to happen. Holy crap, amazed that it did.
Yeah, absolutely. But we are going to take a bit of a break here. When we come back, we're going to talk some matches and moments from Survivor Series, as we started already bringing up Sting, but keep it locked, as we will have more Survivor Series talk after the break. And of course, we'll get at the end of the show, we'll talk about this upcoming weekend with all three brands fighting for brand supremacy. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Pat G from the Turnbuckle Talk Radio podcast. And no, we're not talking pro wrestling today, but we are talking sports hoodies, NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, soccer, and much more. And this is brought to you by houseofhoodies.com, a new sponsor here at the TTRP. You can visit thehouseofhoodies.com and pick up your favorite team's merchandise. They have current players, former players, or you can customize your own hoodie, whether it be the NBA, NHL, MLB, and the NFL. After you're done shopping, use the promo code TTR Podcast and you will get 15% off your order. That's TTR Podcast for 15% off at thehouseofhoodies.com. Here, Turnbuckle Talk Radio podcast. We're talking Survivor Series and all the moments, teams, and memories. And of course, my lovely co-host has an idea. What is your idea?
Okay, so as of recording this tonight, the WWE has debuted a brand new Intercontinental Championship belt, which has been unveiled on SmackDown. And myself and Pat G, the mastermind, the godfather of the TTRP, we're just discussing the title belt and what it looks like. And ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already seen this belt, Google it, go to WWE.com, whatever you got to do to look at it. We're discussing it. And as he's discussing it, he kind of made me feel a little old, but not in a bad way. Because the updating of this belt is an updating of a rehash from a 2011 concept that Cody Rhodes, now, head of AEW, put out there on the Hell in the Cell pay-per-view. And you were bringing up an idea and you were talking about it, and it was so damn good. I wanted to stray from our Survivor Series conversation for 5 seconds so that we could have an actual on-record conversation of it, because to be honest, what you were starting to say was some brilliant-ass shit. And I want to hear what you have to say so that the fans can hear this conversation about this belt, its design, our nostalgia. I think you were kind of leaning towards that with the design of the championship. Yeah.
Like, this is the thing, is myself, Dan, a lot of our friends, we grew up in the 80s, 90s era of pro wrestling. Yes, we weren't alive. We weren't even thought of the times of your Vern Gagne's and the 70s and everything. And when like Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes were kind of in their prime and everything.
Uh-huh.
And we lived through the primes of Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, many others, and we've gone through the times of John Cena. We are now only a few months shy of the year 2020. And that's essentially what I said is it's going to be in a couple of years, we're going to be 30 years away from the official start of the Monday Night Wars and Attitude Era. Not to make anyone feel old and make myself feel old too, but I feel like WWE has noticed that, and they're starting to kind of build a uniformity around their championships and everything. Not that they're not going to forget the past or what has been done to build, but they're building something that in 20 years, when we're still like worth seeing all the stuff that we grew up with or whatever, and like the Hall of Fame packages, and it's like the legacy entries, guys that we were like, oh, should have been a Hall of Fame, but that weren't. The people that are like your son's age are now going to be talking about all the times like now. So it's something for them to relate to, like we relate to the nostalgia of the 80s and 90s.
Which is, because we were bringing up the redesign of this belt, which led us into the conversation about the newly unveiled, as of, a couple weeks ago, what I'm going to refer to now as the blue belt.
Yes.
The SmackDown Heavyweight Championship belt, which Bray Wyatt currently has. And you had brought up a funny, an anecdote, I guess I could say, where you said, I thought they were going to do something like they did with the Smoking Skull Stone Cold belt and have it kind of like only an evil clown to match the Fiend character. And this kind of made me chuckle inside, because there's probably a generation of kids that have no goddamn clue that Stone Cold Steve Austin had a custom belt.
Not at all.
And it would be cool, in my opinion, because they do the side plates. How cool would it be if Bray Wyatt did have that? And in 20 years, my son, or, we know a lot of people with kids, that would be the nostalgic belt that they would be talking about. Like, remember when the Fiend had the clown belt and it was all skulls and it had Ramblin' Rabbit on the side? That was cool. And meanwhile, here we are, not old dudes, but like you said, for some of the moments that we talk about, they're 21, 22, 23 years removed. In a few years, it's going to be 30 years. Like, that's a lifetime for some people.
Like, truthfully honest, Undertaker debuted WWF television Survivor Series 1990.
29 years ago.
29 years ago.
My God.
Yeah.
Wow. You don't think about these time gaps in wrestling because they're so fresh and they're burned in our minds, which I guess for us talking about this particular pay-per-view, because we were discussing before the commercial break the teams that came to our mind, and then you have this weekend coming up for Survivor Series. The game has changed because you have these new stars that are melding with the older stars, and you have the future of the business in NXT, and they're all fighting for dominance. And I never, until tonight, as weird as this sounds, until like this conversation, I never realized that the guys that my kid is going to be watching this weekend is going to be the Jake the Snake, Hulk Hogan and Demolition team, or the Warriors team, or the Heenan family team that we talked about earlier.
Yep.
As far as teams go. Like, it never dawned on me that that was a thing until we just had this conversation.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, granted, yeah, I don't have kids myself, but like, I've like, you have your son, a couple other people have kids. Like, the teams that are going to be together this weekend, like the Undisputed Era and the NXT, Raw, SmackDown teams, they're going to be talked about by the kids in 15, 20 years, how we talk about the teams that we talk about in that same light, like you just said. And that's the thing, like, you don't truly think about the time gaps until you're actually in the moment talking about them.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the things that kind of is, I don't want to say boggling my mind at this current point in time, but like, holy cow, as far as, the star power that's going into this particular Survivor Series and, the things that are, quote, on the line, you have 3 brands going at it for essentially in, bragging rights, you could call them.
Yeah.
But the caliber of stars that are involved with this is so damned high, because you do have your Undisputed Era. You do have, Adam Cole, who, when all of this started, when we got wind a few months ago that NXT was going to USA Network on Wednesday nights to compete against AEW, in essence, we didn't think that, holy cow, there's a possibility where you've got, Brock Lesnar is going to be defending his title. The Fiend is going to be defending his title. And Adam Cole on Survivor Series is defending his title. And this may just be the match where a little kid goes, I like him. This is what I consider my pro wrestling.
Exactly. And of course you bring up Adam Cole, and not to mention Adam Cole is, while he's going to defend the NXT championship on Survivor Series, he doesn't know who he's going to be defending it against, but he also has to lead his team, his faction, the Undisputed Era, into a War Games match.
The night prior. With of all people, he's got his team, but the team that they're facing, holy mother of God. Because you have the Undisputed Era, Adam Cole, Bobby Fish, Kyle O'Reilly, and Roderick Strong, of course. They're facing Tommaso Ciampa, Keith Lee, Dominic Djokovic, and Walter. Yep.
And Walter.
And Walter. Okay, the face of, and this is something that we have discussed in previous podcasts, with this NXT crossover stuff, where they just had NXT or Raw in the UK, and who do you have facing Seth Rollins? Walter, the NXT UK champion.
Yep.
Now it's become this global NXT universe where it's no longer, it's just these guys in Orlando. It's like, no, if it's NXT worldwide.
Yeah, and of course, bringing up the NXT UK, the NXT UK Women's Champion is on the team with Bianca Belair, Io Shirai, and Shayna Baszler, taking on Rhea Ripley, Candice LeRae, Tegan Nox, and Mia Yim.
And that's the night prior to the Survivor Series, where Shayna Baszler could potentially have the biggest upset of the year of her career.
Oh, yes.
And at this point, she has surpassed Asuka as the most dominant NXT Women's Champion of all time.
Oh, absolutely.
She's got a shot at immortality against one man.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. And of course, keeping it with NXT TakeOver before we get into Survivor Series.
Please do.
You have Finn Balor, who we have no idea what's going on with Finn Balor just yet, taking on Matt Riddle.
The King of Bros. Bro.
Which is going to be a hell of a match.
The promos, okay. And once again, I admit when I'm a mark. I'm a mark for Finn Balor. Okay? You might notice a theme this show because it seems to be all the painted up dudes are the guys that Dan liked. Okay. It's ironic because it's Ultimate Warrior Sting and the next evolution of these characters, which would be Finn Balor.
Yeah.
The Demon. But we're not seeing the Demon King. What we're seeing is someone reminiscent of his New Japan Pro Wrestling days. And one of the knocks that I've heard wrestling fans say about Finn Balor's time on, quote, main roster, end quote, is that Finn Balor's promos weren't the greatest. Okay, Finn Balor may not be the best talker on main roster when you're handing him this giant laborious script in which you're trying to convey Irish undertones because although it's 2019, you still have to make him an Irishman, even though everyone knows that given the right circumstances, dude's going to paint up like a fucking demon. There's my one F-bomb for the show.
That's like your 12th.
Is it?
Yeah, you had a lot earlier.
All right, well, I'm excited tonight.
Yeah, obviously. But it's the thing is with Finn Balor, his promos are on point because, like you said, he doesn't have the script and he's being himself.
That's exactly what I wanted to get to. Thank you for reading my mind, Pat G. Psychic as always. This is what happens when you strip down the overproduced BS and you let these guys be themselves. Finn Balor was a great promo. Finn Balor could have cut amazing promos if he had been on Raw and SmackDown without the overproduction and without the overscript. This dude is amazing in the ring, and he's cutting some fantastic promos against not just NXT, but Matt Riddle, the King of Bros. And the best part about that is that he now has a chance to work with someone who physically can dish it out as well as take it.
Absolutely.
You know,
and
we've talked about on this show how great Matt Riddle could be. Here's his opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. And then, of course, as we mentioned, Adam Cole will learn who he will face on Survivor Series, as the triple threat match for the number one contendership is going to be the Bruiserweight Pete Dunne versus Killian Dane versus Damian Priest.
Ooh. Who do you got?
Me, personally, I'm taking Pete Dunne.
Okay.
Just because I'm taking Pete Dunne, just because, like, not saying the other two guys don't deserve it. Pete Dunne is just, he ran NXT UK for the longest time. Him winning the NXT championship would just solidify him even more.
Even if he doesn't win the NXT championship at Survivor Series the next night.
Yeah.
Look at his resume.
Oh, yeah.
Look at what they've already done with him on WWE television. And more importantly than that, if I were Triple H and any kind of programming with WWE, and I wanted to show what my product was to eyeballs that maybe already didn't know what my product was, I would put Adam Cole and Pete Dunne as my NXT championship. And I would say, here are two guys that can go. And I'd give them 15 to 20. And I'd say, you're opening up the pay-per-view. Your first match. Go show us what you got.
Yeah.
Show the world what NXT really is.
Absolutely. And those two guys would, because it would be the initial and longest reigning NXT UK champion versus the NXT champion.
The current. And the guy who, with the Undisputed Era holds all the cards.
Yeah.
They're the guys that have kind of spearheaded this NXT versus the world, NXT versus everybody mentality that has built this pay-per-view to be something special this year.
Oh, absolutely. And it's going to be something special because the matches alone for this card it's a stacked card, plain and simple, because you of course have the championship matches. You have Brock Lesnar defending the Universal Championship versus Rey Mysterio, which this goes back to something Dan said a couple of months ago when they first started with the angle when Brock Lesnar beat up Rey's son Dominic. that relationship between Rey and Paul Heyman go, hey, well, I'm going to throw you something here.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Of course, you have the WWE, you have the other title match The Fiend Bray Wyatt versus Daniel Bryan, which kicks back to their feud a couple of years ago, and also gives Bray Wyatt a opponent that can go and dish it out.
And both of those matches, and you mentioned it a minute ago, they go back in. This was something that was brought up earlier this year where they were looking for people to help bring continuity to storylines.
Yep.
And the connection between Rey Mysterio and Paul Heyman, obviously there. Brock Lesnar and Rey Mysterio met up during the Ruthless Aggression era.
Yep.
But also, this is a for the, SmackDown Heavyweight Championship. This is a callback to 2014 when Daniel Bryan was a member of the Wyatt family and Daniel Bryan had crossed Bray Wyatt, and this gimmick where the Fiend doesn't forget. And the coolness of this is that this could be one of the last matches for Rey Mysterio in WWE, because we don't know how much longer he's got on his contract.
That's true.
But Daniel Bryan, this could be one of the last big matches that he has. And it's weird to think of that, especially considering earlier this year, he and Kofi Kingston tore the house down in an emotional roller coaster at WrestleMania. Now he's ending the year at one of the biggest pay-per-views of the year against one of the biggest reinventions of a character that we've had in recent history.
Oh, absolutely. And then not to mention, you have all the champions of each brand facing each other in triple threat matches. Of course,
my God.
The women's champions, Becky Lynch from Raw, Bayley from SmackDown, Shayna Baszler from NXT. The tag team champions of each brand, the Viking Raiders versus the New Day versus the Undisputed Era. And then you have the U.S. champion AJ Styles, the IC champion Shinsuke Nakamura, and the North American champion Roderick Strong. Which
how do you not explode saying that combination?
Yeah.
How do you not get excited at that trifecta of potentially match of the year caliber awesomeness?
Oh God, yes. Absolutely. And then you have of course we talked about the NXT championship match, and then you have the two big Survivor Series triple threat matches, both on women and men's side. On the women's side, you have Team Raw, led by Charlotte Flair, teaming with Natalya, Asuka, Kairi Sane, and Sarah Logan, versus Team SmackDown, captained by Sasha Banks, along with Carmella, Dana Brooke, Lacey Evans, and Nikki Cross, versus Team NXT, captained by Rhea Ripley, along with Candice LeRae, Tegan Nox, Mia Yim, and Toni Storm from NXT UK. That alone, it's like, wow, that's some talent right there.
So this goes to something that we need to bring up. Okay. I want you to look at the list of women that you and exclude, please, the NXT women. Okay. Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair,
Asuka, Natalya,
okay.
Kairi Sane, Dana Brooke, Carmella, Lacey Evans, and Sarah Logan.
Every single one of them passed through the doors of NXT.
They have.
Every single. Natalya and Charlotte Flair had one of the best women's matches in NXT for the NXT Women's Championship.
Yep.
Okay. You look at that lineup and tell me that the impact that NXT hasn't had isn't in full force with this beautiful, insane master plan that started, 8 years ago, hasn't come to fruition because all of the women that you just mentioned in this match, all of them passed through the doors of NXT.
Yes,
all of them to the Performance Center. All of them have wrestled at Full Sail. All of them, even Carmella, have wrestled on a takeover.
Yep.
All of them. It is a beautiful thing to see NXT's legacy cemented at this pay-per-view. And this one match that you mentioned does it beautifully.
Oh, absolutely.
In comparison to the men's elimination match, maybe not the same. This match, more than any, basically says, okay, we talked about years ago the legacy of NXT and what Dusty's children were going to do. Well, Dusty's children and Regal's children and Bloom's children are now all here on the big stage, at least represented in full, where every single competitor in the women's match have been in NXT.
Yep.
It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's weird is you look at the men's side and yeah, you have some of that NXT legacy, but the complete wild card for the men's team, for the men's elimination matches, of course, you have Team Raw, captained by Seth Rollins, along with Drew McIntyre, Kevin Owens, Randy Orton, and Ricochet, versus Team SmackDown, captained by Roman Reigns, along with Mustafa Ali, Braun Strowman, King Baron Corbin, and Chad Gable, aka Shorty G, versus Team NXT, which no one knows who the Team NXT is going to be.
I'm going to call it. Who do you think's team captain?
Truthfully, I honestly think it's going to be Finn Balor.
All right. So you and I are in 100% agreement. And I don't think it's going to be regular Finn Balor.
No. I don't. I think it's going to be Demon King Finn Balor.
I think Demon King Finn Balor, New Japan Pro Wrestling Demon King Finn Balor.
Yeah.
The true Demon King is going to be rolled out. Because even if he beats Matt Riddle the night prior and defeats the King of Bros, which would be, too sweet. Whoop, whoop. How balls out awesome would it be for them to be like, if Finn Balor is the face of NXT and was the face of NXT, especially 5 years ago, we're going to make him the other face, because if you look at it, you need a face for your product. Seth Rollins is the face of Raw. Roman Reigns is the face of SmackDown.
Yep.
Finn Balor, of course, the longest reigning NXT champion. It would only be an intelligent choice. Who do you pick for the rest of the team, though?
You know what? There's two sides of this. One side, I would go with all true NXT alumni guys that built NXT. So, and if his thumb was heel, I would put Samoa Joe in there, but his thumb's still broken. I believe you're going to have shit. If you go with a true NXT legacy team type deal with Finn Balor, you're going to see Shinsuke Nakamura.
Ooh, goddamn, son.
You're going to see Sami Zayn. Especially with his work with Shinsuke on the mic. Of course. I think that would be awesome. You're going to see potentially like someone that's kind of out of the blue type deal. Like that's gone through NXT but got called up to the main roster and may not be focused like everyone else has. But I think your main three are going to be Balor, Nakamura, and Zayn, along with a fourth one. They're going to go with 4 because the fifth man's going to be completely unknown. That fifth man is going to turn out to be Kevin Owens.
So you think Kevin Owens is going to do the swerve on Team Raw?
Yep.
How? But first off, that'd be boss level. And so, no Tommaso Ciampa.
No.
Okay. No Johnny Wrestling.
No.
No King of Bros. So
nope.
We're going with basically what you would call an NXT All-Stars team.
Yep.
So what about Bobby Roode?
You know what?
What about a Bobby Roode? I mean, he's kind of relegated to the tag team.
Honestly, I would love to see Bobby Roode on that team, but I feel like, you know what? Honestly, thinking about it, because I can't have Samoa Joe. You have to put Bobby Roode on that, because Bobby Roode did build NXT, but you leave that fifth. I'm leaving that fifth spot open because I'm honestly believing you're going to get the Kevin Owens swerve against Team Raw.
Now, I know a lot of people, because we have to address the pipe bomb in the room.
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry. I know you're angry at me for even alluding to it.
I'm not angry about it. I just know it. You know what? That thought is the furthest thing from my mind, because I don't expect it.
You don't expect it, but no one expects the Spanish Inquisition either. So, a Monty Python reference on a wrestling podcast.
Yeah.
So here we go. CM Punk talked highly about NXT.
He did.
On his backstage interview, his backstage with Renee. He talked about he loves the independent wrestling spirit of NXT, and he blatantly pointed out the fact that that's my roots. NXT would have been his jam. He even talked about being relegated to OVW in that promo. And how he felt with that, and how this is very reminiscent of it, except for the fact that it's very punk and it's very hardcore and it's very DIY. What would you do if CM Punk maybe wasn't the fifth man, but Seth Rollins has kind of been a little turd on Twitter?
He has.
CM Punk. If CM Punk's music hit and he was one of the last two in the match and it distracted him enough for a Finn Balor to pull a victory?
You know what? I could see that happening, because like I said, on the one side of my brain, you have that like All-Star or whatever, but then on the other side, of course, you're going to have Balor. I think you see a return. You have Tommaso Ciampa. I think you have a returning Velveteen Dream and Johnny Wrestling.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And then that fifth guy probably being Matt Riddle. But that's the thing. I was like, and I think Matt Riddle joins the team because of the respect that is potentially earned between Balor and Riddle after the NXT match.
Because that seems to be the whole thing with Balor's promos. So, and his attacks on Matt Riddle, and it would be cool to see this all-star team, because I do see because now we no longer have call-ups. Am I correct? The NXT roster that we have is the NXT roster that we're going to have.
Yep.
I see the King of Bros winning that NXT championship at WrestleMania weekend, or at least the North American title at WrestleMania weekend. I also see Velveteen Dream winning that NXT championship. And that's the best part, is that we no longer have to worry about these guys getting, quote, the call up to the main roster, because the entire marketing behind this is NXT is the main roster.
Yep. And we are the main brand. So you guys can have a Velveteen Dream or Tommaso Ciampa show up on Raw and SmackDown, but they're they're on NXT.
Yeah, and of course they're going to mention where they are, and that's the beauty of it, is because once again we're going at this angle where if they get exposure on SmackDown and they get exposure on Raw, maybe it'll nudge the numbers up on Wednesday night, which, whether we want to admit it or not, the numbers are getting posted, so we're seeing where NXT is on Wednesday nights. So a Kevin Owens switch and a KO going back home to NXT, that may be a bump, because Kevin Owens was one of the best NXT champions there was.
Yeah. And and a little bit of side thing is somebody tweeted at Chris Jericho and asked him about the ratings and everything. And Chris Jericho came out and was like, well, it wasn't a normal NXT show, now was it? Which it wasn't, which we all know it wasn't. But if NXT's the main brand and you have all these guys that went through NXT and NXT has this independent wrestling feel, wouldn't you think of the guys that built their names on the independents want to be there?
Yeah. And there is that argument, which once again brings me back to Punk.
Yes, because if Punk decides to show up and he gets a match with Seth Rollins, whatever. You build on that thing. But if CM Punk goes, I'm going to join NXT because this is my home, this is my roots. Imagine the dream matches that man can have.
Which is kind of one of the thoughts that I was having in regards to the CM Punk potential. Okay, please. No one beat me down for what I'm about to say. I don't care about him wrestling Daniel Bryan again.
No.
I don't care about him wrestling Roman Reigns again. I really, honestly to God, don't care about him wrestling Seth Rollins. Who do I want to see him wrestle? Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Finn Balor, Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Wrestling, Adam Cole, Donovan Dijak, Matt Riddle. I want to see Matt Riddle's promos against CM Punk being like, bro, I had more of an opportunity on The Ultimate Fighter than you did, bro. You were in a UFC pay-per-view in your hometown, bro.
Yep.
I want to see that. I don't want to see rehashes of, 6-year-old WWE storylines. Because, the funniest part about it is that the first person to pop off at the mouth on Twitter to try and get a fight was Seth Rollins. It's like when CM Punk left in 2014, he'd already wrestled Seth Rollins, at least in his Shield form. So what's the difference now? Really? Except for Seth Rollins ending Sting's career, breaking John Cena's nose, and, being kind of reckless with Finn Balor and costing him 9 months of his career.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the thing is the matches alone on NXT. And yeah, CM Punk said it best. He's like, I'm 41 years old. Getting into a wrestling ring is kind of not in my thing. But you know what? CM Punk went and did MMA, and much respect. He did it. It didn't turn out maybe as well as he wanted it to, but he still went in there and did it. And you know what? Maybe it's the thing of, his WWE career didn't really end the way that he may have wanted it. You know what? If CM Punk comes back and wrestles 4 or 5 matches under the NXT brand and decides somewhere in 2020 to hang it up, I'm cool with that. But if it doesn't happen, okay. We all know the man's feelings on wrestling.
And the fact that we even have him back at wrestling, and the fact that he's even talking about wrestling, and the fact that he's working for WWE, and, the one thing everyone wanted is the one thing everyone is pissed about. Why is he here? Because he's one of the best professional wrestlers that walked in the doors of WWE, maybe. I'm with you. I'm kind of with you that the legacy of CM Punk being the best in the world and being one of the greatest of all time, the way he walked out, no, that does not leave a legacy for him being the best in the world. He's been bastardized. He's been ignored. He's been looked over. And, wrestling fans have a very long memory. And from June of 2011 until January of 2014, you cannot convince fans otherwise that CM Punk was not the man.
Oh, absolutely.
So for us to pretend that that time frame didn't exist, and for us to just lollipops and roses and John Cena, no. Does the way he sucked, does the way he left sucked for us? Absolutely. But like you said, if he were to go to the NXT brand and have independent matches, and if Vince doesn't want to put him on WWE television, fine. Put him on NXT television. Let him have some really great matches. Let him bring some guys up. And then, like you said, if he decides, hey, I'm 41, I didn't plan on doing this forever, I'm not AJ Styles, I'm cool with leaving, thanks everybody, and walks out and keeps his analyst job, hell, I'd be cool with that. Because it brings the NXT guys up.
Yep.
It teaches them new style. You get the rub, so to speak, where you're in the ring with the guy who held the title for 434 days and was one of the biggest merchandise pushers of all time. Now you're working with him? Come on, that would be like, and to take this however you want it, when AJ Styles showed up, that's like AJ Styles working with Roman Reigns. Yeah, Roman Reigns was a guy. He was the top guy you were pushing, but everyone watching television knew that AJ Styles was the one who was making Roman Reigns look phenomenal.
Oh, absolutely. And it's the same deal with, you look at, not to bring AEW into it, you look at AEW. Chris Jericho having the championship right now, and him facing the guys that he's facing, he's bringing them up. Like, you put a CM Punk on TV, he's gonna raise the stock of a Keith Lee and Dakota and Dominic and guys that you're bringing up. Imagine him and Velveteen Dream, them promos. Holy mother of God!
The Dream does not acknowledge that you're speaking to him because you were not around when the Dream began. Boom, done.
Exactly. Like I understand he's hired by Fox Sports to be the annual analyst of WWE. And on a side note, I watched backstage. I love the fact that he got to be himself. He didn't get edited. He was just cutthroat. He was honest and brutal and cutthroat.
Which is something that wrestling fans are. Like, I mean, obviously, proof in the pudding, us talking about this the way that we are, where we're calling bullshit on certain things that are in professional wrestling, where we as fans have a high expectation for the product, and maybe not so much from the performers because we've known a lot of them, but from a managerial standpoint, you're kind of like, please don't insult our intelligence. And with his position, he's able to not insult our intelligence while giving us the content that we want. He knows that he is a hot commodity. He knows that he's CM Punk. He knows that fans will pay to see CM Punk. And he knows, obviously, by the ratings now for FS1, the ratings were up on his show. The first time Punk was back on WWE TV and it was announced, I'm throwing air quotes up for WWE TV.
Yeah.
The ratings were up.
Oh, yes, they were.
People want to listen to what CM Punk has to say. I believe the ratings were higher than NXT. Punk's opinion.
I know NXT had higher ratings than AEW this week. Yeah. I know the ratings for backstage WWE they were pretty. They did get a bump.
It was significant. It wasn't like a 0.01.
No,
it was a significant bump.
Yeah, they got to. Yeah, and that's the thing. He's not going to be on it every week, but the weeks that he's going to be on, it's gonna bump because of it.
Exactly, which goes to show you that by erasing history like they have, they've actually created a bigger movement for people who want to see it. I don't necessarily care if CM Punk wrestles again. It would be awesome, but I don't necessarily care. You know, he said it himself. He's 41. I mean, who knows? And I mean, this is coming from, someone who's analyzed the brain patterns of fighters and whatnot and understands concussive damage and CTE and, the damage that can come from being in a professional wrestling ring and when things go wrong. We don't know exactly how CM Punk is feeling after his mixed martial arts matches in the UFC.
Oh, absolutely.
He took a horrible, horrible beating in his fight in Chicago that he lost. Okay? Any man, and I'm giving you respect for this, anyone who steps into mixed martial arts into an octagon has the same amount of respect as anyone who steps in a professional wrestling ring, because if not more so in certain aspects, because the dude on the other side wants to beat you into unconsciousness.
Yep.
Okay. CM Punk's processing in his brain may have been altered. I'm not saying it is. I'm not being a medical doctor here, and I'm not making a diagnosis. But he took one hell of a thumping.
He did.
He took a lot of headshots.
He did.
He tried to cover up. Who knows what happened in that fight? Who knows if it would even be in his best interest to take one bump in professional wrestling, let alone the caliber of performance that we would expect from the best in the world, because we are greedy little pigs and we want what we want out of our performers. We want the absolute best. Okay, not every guy who shows back up after a 6-year hiatus is Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam 2002.
Yeah. Yeah, not everybody can be Shawn Michaels, because it wasn't, and that's the thing, like, it wasn't until, and yeah, even, and I know people were speaking of Shawn Michaels, people were kind of shitting on that tag team match with DX versus the Brothers of Destruction, but you gotta remember, Triple H is no longer an in-ring competitor. Shawn Michaels has been out, is a lot older than he was in 2002. Same thing with Kane and Undertaker. Like, that's the thing. We are very greedy as far as certain performance, because we expect a certain level of greatness. And honestly, if CM Punk decides to get back in a ring, I'm sure CM Punk is going to be like, you know what? Listen, give me 6 months. Let me go to the Performance Center. Let me get in the ring. Let me take some bumps. Let me train and get myself ready before I put myself in front of a crowd. Because I'm CM Punk. I know what they expect.
Yeah, and every performer who does that, definitely knows, like, he has to have thought to himself, okay, by signing this contract, fans are going to expect it. Just like one of the first questions out of Renee's mouth, one of the things she brought up, hey, the pay-per-view's in Chicago, huh? It's like, okay, why don't you just fucking kick the dude in the ass and push him into a wrestling ring? By all means, do it. Because that's essentially what you're doing by even alluding to the fact that the pay-per-view is in Chicago, and it's one of the biggest pay-per-views of the year, and it really is the pay-per-view that pushes the boat on course to WrestleMania.
Yep. And oh man, imagine CM Punk getting that WrestleMania moment.
The main event, the quote unquote last match.
Yeah, because honestly, if CM Punk comes back and he's gonna ring and he's gonna wrestle, you know what? I would do a very slow burn with him and Rollins. Like, not saying that I want to see him and Rollins, okay, but if you're gonna return, like you said, the music hits and he distracts Rollins and Rollins gets distracted enough and loses or whatever. And I want the slow burn to Mania, because right there, that's your last match of the night.
And you and I have talked about this on previous podcasts, that the one thing that professional wrestling is kind of missing right now is the year-long burn. like the year and a half long burn, almost 2 year long burn.
Yep.
In certain storylines, like, we talk about the one all fans mention with quote slow burns is Macho Man and Hulk Hogan and the implosion of the Mega Powers at WrestleMania 5.
Yep.
Okay. But you have to remember, the Ultimate Warrior versus Hulk Hogan was a slow burn too, and it was in a completely. All it was a little face off at a Royal Rumble, a little bump skis. Next thing you know, we want these two superheroes to fight at WrestleMania. I mean, Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart was a slow burn because if you look at Shawn's 95 and Bret's 95, they were parallel in certain aspects.
Yeah, they were.
Brains. But it was slow builds. It was meticulously put together. The Undertaker versus Kane at WrestleMania was a slow burn.
Oh,
as well.
Yeah. It was like you had Kane show up at Bad Blood, and then you're like, and Undertaker's like, I'm not going to fight my brother. And eventually he's like, yo, okay, I'm going to fight my brother, but it's going to be on the stage of the Immortals.
Exactly. In Boston at one of the biggest pay-per-views of all time. If you look at the stacked card that was, WrestleMania 14, because you had Austin, Shawn Michaels, Mike Tyson,
yep,
Undertaker, and Kane, New Age Outlaws, and Terry Funk and Cactus Jack. You had so much going on at that time that was building that really, when you look at it, the two main events of that show was Austin and Taker. And I mean, all of those were slow burns. So I feel what you're saying, and all of that ignites at Survivor Series.
Oh, absolutely. And honestly, you know what? If CM Punk shows up to Survivor Series, I would love to see that moment. Like, as you said, his music hits, Seth Rollins gets distracted, it gives NXT the victory, whatever. But then you build it from now until Mania, and with that slow burn, because we all know CM Punk's not going to be on TV every week.
No. And I know that there'd be some people who kind of poop on it and are like, part-timer's disease. What the heck is this crap? Blah, 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 blah. You know what?
It's not really a part-timer. It's a guy that's been gone for 6 years.
Exactly. This would be the equivalent of Shawn Michaels showing up and going against Triple H at SummerSlam, or Shawn Michaels showing up in an elimination chamber at a Survivor. Wait, was that a Survivor Series? Oh my God. How did we bypass the Survivor Series elimination chamber match at Madison Square Garden?
Yeah, I was going to bring that up as match, and then we kind of rolled into the NXT card.
Oh my God, how did we bypass Shawn Michaels coming back and winning the heavyweight championship at Madison Square Garden in the first elimination chamber
in
match?
2002?
See, once again, this is that whole brain working at its own pace thing that I said earlier.
Yep.
That perfect analogy right there. I'm not saying that CM Punk is as good as Shawn Michaels, so please, people, don't quote me.
You know what? Honestly, if Punk returns and has a match in WWE, I put it in the same light as Sting, because a lot of people never expected Sting to show up and be part of the WWE.
I certainly didn't. I was a Sting fan. I guarantee. I think I even said
a lot of people, based on all the things that we know, don't ever expect CM Punk to be in a WWE ring again. Hell, we never expected him to be on WWE television again.
I never expected the name CM Punk to appear on WWE.com, WWE's Twitter, WWE's Facebook.
Yeah.
But guess what? For 2 weeks, CM Punk's name has been everywhere. And Vince has been very forgiving.
Well,
okay.
Vince has been forgiving, but I think a lot of that has to do with Triple H.
That's going to be the hard sell. Because to me, you look back at what was going to be WrestleMania 30, and to the best of my knowledge, I may be incorrect on this. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. It was going to be CM Punk versus Triple H.
Yeah, it was supposed to be.
Which would have been a good match. We've seen it before, but it would have been a good match. I mean, CM Punk's departure after the Royal Rumble definitely changed a lot. But it changed a lot for the better because of Daniel Bryan and the Yes Movement and what was eventually going to happen. But if you look at it, I mean, yeah, Triple H would be the one that would have to okay everything. He's the one that really works with the talent. But even he has got to acknowledge, like, dude, CM Punk is everywhere, and the money we could make off of his merchandise for his first T-shirt returning alone, let alone the announcement of CM Punk being on Raw would bump ticket sales and viewership. And like you said, what if he ends up on NXT? So then you have Triple H running NXT with CM Punk being on there. My God in heaven, how great would that be?
Oh, absolutely. And it's just a thing of Survivor Series weekend. This weekend's going to be stacked. It's going to be 2 shows with NXT TakeOver and Survivor Series itself that you don't want to miss. You want to watch them live. You don't want to watch them with knowledge of things that are happening. So in my respect of this, if you're going to miss NXT TakeOver or you're going to miss Survivor Series, avoid the internet like you avoided it for Avengers Endgame, because otherwise spoilers will be abound.
Yeah, and I won't lie, I will be one of them. So I will not apologize if the Demon King shows up. You will see me squealing on the internet like a little happy schoolgirl.
I didn't say you couldn't squeal. I just said if you're not going to watch it, you got to avoid it.
Oh, no, I'm openly admitting I'm going to spoil the shit out of that if Demon King shows up, so none of you can be angry at me.
Oh, okay, all right. So Dan's going to spoil things. So
I'll be generous with my spoils. I'll be generous with it.
Generous? Oh, okay. Well, that's going to do it for us here at the TDRP. I'd like to thank you for listening. Please check us out, GearNetwork.com, Turnbuckle Talk Radio Podcast. Check out the other great shows that Gear Network has. And as always, for Dan Fury, I'm Pat G. This is the TTRP. We're out. See you on the flip side. The Turnbuckle Talk Radio podcast is brought to you by Gear Network and ShopGear.com. We can be listened to via Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and everywhere else you can get your podcasts. The TTRP introduction was done by Trevor Dugan. The show is hosted by Patrick Gancheski and Daniel Roberts. Post-production of the TTRP is done by Patrick Gancheski and John Cimino. If you'd like to follow us via social media, you can search Turnbuckle Talk Radio Podcast on Facebook. You can follow us at Twitter by using the name Turnbuckle_Talk. Or if you have questions or concerns, you can reach us via email at turnbuckletlkradio@gmail.com. We'd like to thank you for listening to the Turnbuckle Talk Radio Podcast, downloading our episodes, following us on social media, and interacting with us.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.